Hello, it's Josh here from racingtoprofit.co.uk. Having sent you some free horse profiles a few weeks ago, there's been a few requests, and I promised to do so, to actually demonstrate how I go about identifying horses that have a specific profile that we can track and try and profit from in the future. I'm a great believer that this is one of the most powerful approaches to horse racing, both over jumps and on the flat. So far, I've had a lot of success, or quite a bit, I should say, last season in terms of flat horses, just because flat handicappers tend to run quite a few times, can go on quite a few years, and even win kind of when they're up to age 8, 9, and 10. And some of them, or quite a few of them, actually develop a clear profile. So I thought I would kind of dive into my horse race base account on this video and kind of show you around on the profiling side. In future I will do a similar video just looking at the system building software, and actually I've started to look at trainers who are good in 5 furlong and 6 furlong handicap sprints for the flat season, and actually in a few weeks' time, well, probably once all the jumping festivals are out the way after Aintree, I'll do a video looking at system building with some ideas for the flat. But in the meantime, let's have a look at profiling. So, if you're not familiar with Horse Race Base, this is the main home screen. Loads of different things. I don't plan on going around it, all of it, during this video because we'll be here too long. The aim of this is to look at profiling. If I look there on my Horse Race Base account, I can go down and look at my horses management, and this just looks at those that you're tracking. So this is my second. I've got 2 Horse Race Base accounts because you're only allowed to build up to 100 systems in each one, so I had to get another one because I've got lots of things on the go that I'm always tracking and researching. But anyway, so far there's 79 horses, and I started actually adding to this account a few weeks ago that I'm tracking that I think have clear profiles. So I'll show you when you manage them and how you can track them, but to start with, I thought I would pick a horse which got me really excited last year, called Lord Buffhead. There he is. So if I click on him, so you can click on any horse and this is what you're faced with. You can see there the kind of number of runs on the flat and wins, and then there's a summary of all their runs and you can order them by date, track their position, whatever really, and you can filter, as you can see along here, just their flat runs or weather runs, National Hunt if they're jump horses, and break them down by chase, hurdle and flat race. Now the tool to identify a horse that may have winning conditions is the profiler tool here in the top right hand corner, so you can see the options there. Now I discovered this horse a few months ago, but for those of you that downloaded the free profiles, the 10 free profiles, and there's a link in the email that was sent out, so you can grab hold of those if you didn't when I sent them out originally. I presented those just by copying and pasting the screen you see here, so that you can get a clear idea of conditions that the horse does well in. Now, when I talk about profiling, I want to find a horse which has clear conditions for when they do well. Now, on the whole, going and distance are kind of, well, they're 2 kind of very important considerations, but they're not the way in, so to speak. I'm particularly interested in a horse's performance at a track. Obviously, race quality and class is important, just to know if a horse has a class ceiling and kind of when not to back them. As is an odds range. Odds ranges are interesting. You will find some horses that only ever win when they're kind of under 6-1 starting price, which would suggest to me anyway that they only go in when they've been gambled on. But you can read into that what you will. The official rating range, again, you'll find that with many horses they just can't win above a certain rating. this Lord Buffhead isn't such a good example with this particular area of focus, but there are some which you'll see that have ran, let's say, 20 times a mark above 70 and never won or never placed, for example. The trainer, so we can see if they've changed trainers and their record with different trainers. If I move down here, so keep your eyes at the top of the video. Now this is the area which really excites me. Is number of runners. You will see some horses are small field bullies or get crowded or feel they get crowded out by too many runners, all the way to some actually like to be surrounded and like to follow other horses and don't like too much air or space, and therefore perform better in larger fields. Of course, some of this just may not be to do with the horse's liking for the number of runners at all, and it's just that they've run in their favourable conditions more times in races with a certain number of runners, but they're the kind of things you have to look at. Days since run is the one that I really like. You will see here in a moment the area I'm going to focus on, which is his rest pattern of 16 to 30 days. But just moving across their performance when they're favourite and non-favourite in the race. The other angle, the other way in I like with profiling is the month. There are quite a few horses are very seasonal. Now this can be to do with their ground preference, but more often than not horses just seem to come to hand at certain times of the year, or their trainer targets them at certain races or gets them ready year in year out for a certain part of the year. So you have to do a lot of, well, not a lot of, but some reading between the lines with such things. Course direction's another one, especially on the flat. You'll get horses that perform particularly well on straight courses as opposed to going around bends or vice versa. Some may have a great left-handed record and useless on right-handed or straight tracks. And obviously with jumps horses, that can be clear as well, going right-handed, left-handed. And having read something about that, I believe that is to do with the much like human beings being right-handed or left-handed or right-footed or left-footed, it's the same with horses, and it's to do with their leading leg, and which foot and which leg they tend to push off on can affect their preference for going one way or the other. Weight in handicaps and weight in all races. You'll know if you follow me on the blog in terms of handicap races, I don't pay too much attention to the actual weight carried. I do if it's obvious that the horse, because of the actual size of the animal, has a certain performance record when carrying certain weights. So some flat horses, or let's say jumps horses, will never have ran well, may have ran 10 times carrying 11 stone 10 or more, or 5 times or whatever, and never placed, which would suggest that as an animal they can't actually handle carrying that much weight over jumps, for example. Moving to the right, there's the headgear. That's another interesting one. Seeing a horse's record in headgear, eye shield or cover, you can see with Lord Buffhead cheek pieces, 10 runs in total, never placed. Clearly doesn't like that. In fact, the visor is the only headgear so far that he's responded well to. The age of the horse, just seeing them go through, and this has been a new addition in the last few months from the team at Horse Race Base. The chap behind it, Chris, is always looking to add new features, and the course and distance one's been added, so you can, at a quick glance, see if a horse has a very strong preference over a particular course and distance. So, what I like to do with profiling is to break down the horse's record into handicaps. I'm not at the moment, I don't focus too much on non-handicaps, simply because a lot of that will, when it's filtering on Horse Race Base, will look at maidens and races in the early part of a horse's career. Now they can just, there's one of two ways you can look at that, and maybe more. One is they can just outclass opponents in non-handicap races and just be the better horse, and their performance, whether it's distance, ground, rest pattern, you name it, doesn't really matter because they're the best horse. So it doesn't matter if they actually hate the race conditions, they may win anyway. And obviously on the flip side, if you've got a mediocre or moderate horse that may just not have the ability to win a maiden race, it's pretty unfair to judge them when they've never really were going to win the race anyway. So I like to look at handicaps. That's my preference, and for me it gives more there's more logic and a sound basis in being able to evaluate the horse's performance on its merits. So I click on handicaps. I was researching through a list of horses and came across him a few months, well, probably about a year ago now actually, but it's the days since run, so you can go through and have a look at any horse and see if something stands out. You can hopefully see when I clocked onto the days since run box what grabbed my attention. Oh, the other thing I should say, sorry, I filtered by flat, just because they more wins on the flat, and at that time I was interested in looking at horses' performance on the flat turf. So at the time when I looked at this day since run, you can see there 16 to 30 days. Now he has 8 runs, 5 wins, and he's been in the top 3 or 4 depending on the place in the race 6 out of those 8 times. That includes the 5 wins. He's actually placed 1 other time on top of the 5 wins. Now I found this stat 2 runs before those 2 wins, sorry, so it was 6 runs, 3 wins and 4 places, and that was against, I forget what the numbers were at the time, but they were similar to this. So when Lord Buffhead has returned to the track between 1 and 15 days, he is 1 from 34 and 8 places, including the 1 win. When he's returning 16 to 30 days, you can see now he's 5 wins from 8. Now that is a clear preference. For whatever reason, might be the genetics of the horse or the training regime, he needs more time between his races, or it might be that the trainer puts more time and effort into targeting specific races, having been off the track for more than a couple of weeks, and the actual horse is tuned up to perform his best. Whatever reason, that doesn't really matter. For me, the proof is in the numbers and the proof is in the performance. You can see there. Now if I go, well, the first thing to say is the profit actually before I look at his record. £1 just at starting price on each of those runs would have been worth £65. Obviously you need to see it happen a few times before you can judge, but I can tell you that I backed his last 2 wins both at 16 to 1. So with that information, you've got your way in, and then you need to look at the horse's record. So you can look at the summary. Now let me just get this central here. I just want flat runs so I can filter that. Now look at the days since run here, so it's in the middle of the screen just to the right. We're looking for 60 to 30 days rest pattern. Now of course he does run well, or has run well outside of this rest pattern, and sometimes obviously the horses can win outside of the profile that you've been waiting for him to perform in, but that's just racing. So if we look at Air there on the 9th of October, 6 furlongs soft, he was returning between 16 and 30 days, was 14 to 1. I backed him each way at 16 to 1, wins by 1.5 lengths. Again, you can go down here. Now the first time I backed him was at Air on the 11th of August last year, 2014. Was returning 27 days, that was in the 16 to 30 day bracket. He won by nearly 3 lengths at 9 to 1. He was 16 to 1 in the morning of the race, and got back throughout, and it was never really in doubt really. So that was quite exciting. Now he may never run well again in those conditions, but feel free to note it down. Lord Buffhead on the flat when returning to the track, 16 to 30 days. Put that in your tracker. He is only a 6-year-old. He's got a few more wins left in him, and I'll be watching with interest when he returns with that rest pattern next flat season. Hopefully we can make some profit from him again. Me personally, he's made me about 30, well, he has made me 32 points profit, just that one horse, and he doesn't have to win again for me. I might not have to back him again. He's done his job in terms of making me money, but that just demonstrates the power of the approach. That's one horse who demonstrated a clear preference. Now I know I'm going on, I don't want this video to be overly long. If we do a bit of live profiling, I'll just go through a couple and see. So the way to get a list of horses, I have built a system. Where is it? Um, hold on, I'm looking for flat profiles. There we go. It's in 24, and I've just built this to help with me identifying horses. So you can see there, as I said, I'll do a video in the future looking at system building, that aspect of horse race base. But I wanted flat, I wanted handicaps, and I wanted the horse have won at least 4 times. And I've put between 4 and 20. I don't think there are many horses on the flat that have won more than 20 times. That was just arbitrary, really. But the winning 4 times was important in handicaps, because I wanted to see if there was a clear pattern. And that just means I can then go to qualifiers, and it brings up a list of horses that fit those criteria, so that have ran in a flat handicap and have won 4 handicaps at least in their career. Now I've gone through a lot of these, and there's no other way to do it really, bar clicking on every single horse and looking to identify a profile. That's how I like to do it. It means I don't miss anything, and I just tend to put some music on in the background and do a couple of hours. I did a couple of hours yesterday and found 10 that I've added to my list. That was actually 3 hours looking through. I found 10 horses. So that's what you do really. If I let's have a look. Maybe I'll just go on to the next 200, because I've nearly done a lot of those. Been through a lot of those. So I'm doing this live. I haven't looked at any of these yet and have no idea what we're about to find. So let's click on Hostile Fire. I won't do this too many times. But you can see how my mind works. So flat. Now if I look down here, he's actually been running over maiden hurdles and hurdles. He's only had his 4 wins from 10 on the flat. Now I'm not sure if we're going to see much of a clear pattern here, because I like to focus on exposed handicappers, exposed horses that when they get their conditions again will return to the winner's enclosure. This isn't about predicting the future performance of unexposed horses. It's very much looking for a horse to repeat something they've done previously. If I just look on, click on the flat, we can see from his 10 runs if he does have any particular preference that might stand out. We can see there, not really. Track is one at various different tracks. Going a range from good to soft. Distance there. Official rating, days since run, there's nothing really there. He's won across all different kind of rest pattern periods. Number of runners is similar. There's nothing there really that I would say stands out. And when you've got, as a 3-year-old, 4 career wins so far have been as a 3-year-old, I would probably want to wait for him to develop. Maybe look back in a year or two's time to see if he has developed a preference. So there's nothing there with Hostile Fire. Gabriel's King, trained by David Simcock. He's actually so his flat form is 2 from 24. It might actually be worth looking at his all-weather form, but for the moment, flat handicaps. Let's see if we can spot anything. Well, that's quite interesting, isn't it? In terms of going, he's never been out of the places, as you can see when running on, officially described as good to firm. So his 2 career wins, 2 from 5 on good to firm, always been placed, and he hasn't really performed as well on any other type of going. Now you will find horses with a clear going preference, so that is a way in, although I prefer to find other aspects. But looking at him, his record on good to firm is pretty good, so we can have a look to see if there's anything else which stands out. Yeah, so you look at the trainers, he was actually 0 from 6 for Ian Williams. He probably has a class ceiling, class 3 races under £10,000. I saw only 2 winners. He clearly doesn't win very often on the flat, so it's hard to decipher I wouldn't really say there's a clear rest pattern there, although 16 to 30 days he has placed 1 or placed 50% of the time, but then he's 3 from 9 places 8 to 15, so I wouldn't be keen to say there's much there. Given his liking for good to firm, it wouldn't necessarily be a surprise that he performs well, or his 2 wins have come at kind of during the summer, when the ground is likely to be at its best. That's interesting, I suppose. Right-handed is 0 from 6, left-handed is 2 from 15, 1 or placed in 9 of those 15 starts. Course and distance, nothing particular. Newbury 1 from 1, York Flat 2 miles, 1 from 2. So it's something to go on there, actually. If I look at his all-weather, actually, so we can filter now by his all-weather runs, and in handicaps, Wolverhampton 5 from 13. He's only been out of the places twice, but clearly the market has cottoned onto that a long time ago, because you'd have only made 1.66 points profit on all of those runs and all of those wins, but there may be something else that stands out. Again, clear class ceiling. Well, he's yet to win, I should say, in Class 2 races worth less than £20,000, though has placed twice. I wouldn't say there's a clear rest pattern here at all. And actually, having said all of that, 5 of his 12 wins were Ian Williams. Well, for Ian Williams on the all-weather. So again, that's another complication with this horse, is the change of trainer. All in all, I wouldn't really say there's much there which has stood out, and that is kind of super profitable to follow for the future. The good to firm, given that if we look at his summary, he's been racing on the all-weather quite a bit, and you can just scan down and have a look through. Once I pick the profile, I'll then go through all the runs to note down their performance in the profile area that I consider to be profitable, the one that stands out, to build up a picture of how well they've done. And I use this function, I use the summary of all races, and we'll simply start from the beginning. If for Lord Buffett's I was looking at rest pattern, I would cast my eye over to the middle column, and I would just go along, and every time it was 16 to 30 days rest, I would see the result and just mark it down, so you can build up a clear picture of how well they do. And importantly, you want a horse to have done well over kind of 2 seasons. To have done, if they've performed over 3 seasons with the profile conditions that I think they do well at, then even better. And it shows that they do have a clear liking, that wasn't a kind of fluke one-off season. And also you want the wins to be spaced out. You can find when looking through a horse's profile that the 4 wins came back to back kind of 2 seasons ago, and they haven't done much since. But anyway, looking at this horse again, noting down his preference for good to firm ground would be interesting moving forward. You would expect David Simcock will campaign him on the flat again, and a lot of his good performances have been for David Simcock on the flat and good to firm ground. So you can see there's a win there at the bottom at Newbury. A third of 8 that was placed, that was 11 to 2. Third of 14 at 12 to 1, good to firm. When did he next encounter good to firm? All the way up. So he still hasn't encountered good to firm. We're into the 5th, 31st of May 2014. Good. And then at York, good to firm again. He won there at 14 to 1. So he does look to be a good to firm horse. And actually, although that's not a strong profile, then you can simply add notes in. So that's maybe, and obviously you can write your own notes in when you go through, and I always put a note to myself to check other conditions, which means that when he pops up on good to firm, I'll check that he's in the right class, the ratings say, what the distance is. I'll look at things like rest pattern, time of year and everything, and I can simply add that note to there. and I can then click notify me, and then you can just put a note in here. I'll put possible profile. It's not the kind of strong profile, nowhere near the kind of profile that I would add to track, but given he's never been out of the places on good to firm ground so far, he's been campaigned on the all-weather a lot. Punters might miss him on his first couple of runs on good to firm next season, not realising just how strong a preference he does have for that ground. So Gabriel's King will be added. Next time he runs, it will be flagged to me in my system, my qualifiers section, and it just comes up. So that's Gabriel's King. Maybe we'll look at one or two others. Lady Kashan. So this is a nice, so 5 from 24, 21% win, 50% place. So I can profile, I can look at flat handicaps and see if anything comes up for Lady Kashan. Track going's quite a good spread. Distance yet to win beyond 1 mile 6, which is something to bear in mind. The other thing I haven't mentioned is jockey. Obviously some jockeys get on with some horses very well, which is always a good way in, and on the other side, the flip side of the coin, trainers may book certain jockeys when the horse is expected to perform, so you can identify pretty quickly a horse's performance under certain jockeys. Race quality, you'd say there's a clear class ceiling there, possibly yet to place in 3 runs at class 2 more than 20,000. Odds range, official rating, or yet to do well with a rating of more than 91. Kind of spread across field sizes, not from 5 and 16 plus fields. Now that might mean that she does find too many runners and overcrowding a bit intimidating, or it could be that races with 16 plus runners are very, very competitive and she just may not have been good enough. Decent run, it would have been great if there was a similar Lord Buffhead type scenario there, but actually it doesn't seem to matter how long she has off the track really. She's performed well. Again, the same can be said during months. She's won from March all the way through to September. Course direction, nothing there. I mean, it might be slightly concerning that she hasn't won as a 5-year-old, 0 from 7. Is there a course and distance preference? No. 1 at Carlisle, 1 at Haydock, 1 win at Musselburgh, Pontefract Redcart. So that's a good example of a horse that doesn't really have a clear profile and there's nothing there I could find. I want things to stand out. I don't want to go through in too much detail in the actual all of the runs to find anything. Not only is that too time consuming, but you're then getting down to small numbers and trying to find things that just may not exist, quite frankly. There's nothing clear there to my eye, and that's how I like to do it. So Lady Kashan can go off the list. Let's look at Mass Rally, just because I know that he's an exposed horse who doesn't win very often, but let's see if those 3 wins from 47 runs come at a particular time. So flat handicaps. Well, firstly, the 3 of his career wins have been over 6 furlongs in handicaps, so I wouldn't bother backing him in any other race distance. York's interesting, 2 from 3. Is there anything else? Jockey, he gets on particularly well gets on okay with Paul Mulrennan. Race quality, not much. Odds range, not much. Number of runners, nothing there. Decent run. Well, it's interesting. I mean, he's 1 from 2 when returning in 1 to 7 days, and he's placed in the other time. So that's interesting, but it's not a massive sample really. But that's something to keep an eye on. Straight courses, well, he's just run over straight course. If we look at course direction to the left, well, that's interesting, I suppose. The hood and blinkers combination. is the only one that he's won at, actually, and that is an unusual mix of headgear. So that is quite interesting. So we're hood and blinkers is 3 from 13, and we know that all his wins have been over 6 furlong. So I might, well I will, I'll do it now in a second, go through and see his performance over 6 furlongs with hood and blinkers on. That might make the results even better. So that's interesting, because that is a strange combination of headgear, and when applied he seems to run his best races. He's placed in others and might have been unlucky, but the fact that all 3 career wins have been with hood and blinkers on is interesting. So now we can look at the summary, and we can look at headgear. So you can sort, oh no, you can't sort by headgear. So I want, hold on, let me just see if there's a ground preference. Good 1 from 14, good to soft, heavy. Right, so let's just go through 6 furlong hood and blinkers and start at the bottom. So we can see there is first trained by John Gosden. I'm looking right to the right here where the headgear is. So I'm not interested really until he wears hood and blinkers for the first time. He's obviously won a couple there. If you look at the bottom of the video, Kempton, Wolverhampton and Maiden handicap nursery for John Gosden. Left him to go to Michael Dodds in 2011. Didn't really ran okay with the visor fitted. Again the visor, but he didn't do much. Blinkers didn't do much. Right, there we get into. So we've got hood and blinkers, as you can see. Now I want 6 furlongs, that's where all his wins have come. Actually he was second by a neck over 5.5. So you can't be arbitrary with these things. Can you imagine if you're tracking him in hood and blinkers just waiting for 6 furlong and he crops up at 20 to 1 in a 5.5 furlong race with a stiff finish, for example? It would be rather frustrating. But anyway, so he's a second there over 5.5. 10th, then we get into his so we can start recording this. So hood and blinkers, so he won at Ayr with hood and blinkers on, odds of 16 to 1. Hood and blinkers 6 furlong, he was 14th. Hood and blinkers is actually third, beating less than length over 5 furlongs on soft, so that was a stamina test. Let's just stick to 6 furlong. I want handicaps really now because of the class, and that's another way you can look down in class if you want, and you can go through the class to see the performance as well. But let's leave the 8 because that's not in a handicap, and that's what I want to focus on at the moment. 6 furlong class 2, he had hood and blinkers there on at Doncaster. He finished 8th. Next time he crops up, he wins again at 14 to 1. Hood and blinkers over 6 furlong, good to firm. Well, given his preference for soft, he might not really like good to firm, but we'll put 11th on. And so that's there. Let's have a look at what else we've got. So we've got his win there at York. He wear hood and blinkers again on good to firm. After that, 20 to 1, finished 11th. Sorry, we've got the win, and we've got the 11th over 6 furlong. Hood and blinkers again. He's second in a Group 3 there, so that's quite good. So he's worn them for quite a lot of the time actually. So that's something when you start looking at the headgear combinations. As you can see to the right, it's not a case of them being applied when he's going to perform well. They've just tried them and they've kept them on for a very, very long time. But it's interesting nonetheless. So 6 furlong, so we're going to have a lot of lack of placing here. I'll ignore, even though he's performed well at a grade 3 there with them on, we'll ignore that for the moment. The next handicap, so he's 11th again of 26 over 6 furlong with hood and blinkers on. He then wins again at 14 to 1 at York. That's a grade 2. A group 2 I should say is probably outclassed. Listed. Class 2 6 furlong. That's not a handicap, that probably looks like a conditions race. It's the group 2 at York. 5.5 good to firm. 6 good to firm listed, still with the blinkers on. 6 furlong good to firm. 20th of 27. Good to soft with them on. 16th of 19. And again 6th of 18. No, that's with cheek pieces on, so they've changed the headgear. So this is an interesting one. He's age 8 now. It'll be interesting if they persevere with a completely different set of headgear, and then watch when the hood and blinkers are reapplied next season. For me, he's not what I'd call an outstanding profile, so looking at his results over 6 furlong in handicaps with the hood and blinkers applied, he won, he was 14th, he was 8th, he won again, he was 11th, won, and then his last 3 runs have been pretty poor, 20th, 27th and 16th. It is clear from his profile that he does like cutting the ground, so that's another way where you could get rid of quite a few of those. So he's worth tracking actually, because he's only ever won with hood and blinkers on the flat handicap. As you can see, they're all his form and none. Some of that was when he was a maiden, I think. So his flat handicaps, he's only ever won over 6 furlong. His preference, well, is 0 from 6 from good to firm, so you need to kind of be good through to with juice in the ground, soft through to heavy. And it's an interesting one. Whether or not I would back him blind next time he crops up in a 6 furlong race with hood and blinkers on, I'm not sure, but without doubt it's certainly a way in, and if he's a decent price and he hasn't been wearing them for a while, so he might crop up next kind of September, October hopefully, having worn visors, blinkers, cheek pieces and everything else, his handicap mark will have dropped, and it could well be that he goes in the next time or within the next 5 runs that he wears hood and blinkers at a very decent price. So for me that's interesting. It's not as strong as profile as I would necessarily like, but the fact that his only wins come in a certain set of criteria, i.e. the hood and blinkers, so I just want to add a note. So this is just a note to myself. Check going, check rating, plus other conditions. And then on the actual day of race, it will crop up, and I'll show you in a minute actually. So I'll add him and notify. He's a flat profile. I've got different star levels. I'll unstar him. He's just a flat profile. I've got 1 through to 3 stars that, or 1 to 2 actually, that help me identify those that have much stronger. But Mass Rally's interesting. Yes, he's very exposed, but you'd think he's probably going to win once more, maybe twice in his career, and hopefully it will be when he's wearing the hood and the blinkers combination in race conditions that he likes. And one thing we can say is that all of his wins have been at very decent odds. So that's it for that really. I don't think I need to go in any more. I simply will spend many hours up until the flat season and looking at jumps horses, kind of a couple of hours, 3-5 hours a week, clicking through different horses and adding to my bank of profile horses. The thing I should say is the great thing with Horse Race Base, if I just go on today's cars just to show you what comes up. So when you click on any given horse, when they're actually, oh, that's not a good example, that was silly. Let's just pick the 135 at Southwell, say. When you click on any given horse and profile them, when they're running that day or tomorrow, because this is updated the night before, you can see the yellow line there, and that is today's racing conditions, so you can have a quick glance with your eyes across and see if, well, with Mass Rally as an example, whether he's got the headgear, the hood and blinkers on, etc., etc. So it's a great accessible way. And actually, for any race that I look at and any race I bet in, I go through the profile of every single horse to make sure that they are suited to the race conditions, or if they're unexposed, might improve for the new race conditions. So that's that really. That's it for this video. That's horse profiling. I hope you found that useful. I'm wary that it's quite a lengthy video. I'm sure some of you will enjoy it. Some of you may find it too long. But there's a couple there to take away. Lord Buffhead I would note down with his rest pattern, 16 to 30 days. Mass Rally is interesting with the hood and blinkers combination. It is slightly interesting his last run was with cheek pieces on, so I hope that that headgear combination doesn't return for a little while, and then he can pop up when no one expects him to perform very well at all. So that's the aim of horse profiling, really, is to find a horse with a clear pattern of performance that we can track, and then wait for them to crop up. As you can see, I'm now there's 81. Then I've added those two, but that's just in this account. There's another 130 odd, I think, in my other horse race base account, and you can, I will just keep adding to that list. The majority of these have a very strong, clear preference for when they perform well, and it will be interesting watching them go forward and making profit for them next flat season. I will be looking at more jumps horses and those that have clear preferences on the all-weather as well. But that's it for now. That's how I actually go about finding horses to add to my tracker, and how I go about profiling horses. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.